As stated in the last lesson, the earliest concepts of borders began when early man started to settle in one place. They first created markers and even fences to hold in livestock and protect their crops from outside animals and other threats. As groups began to find commonality among them, as well as a shared common threat, groups began to understand that they would be better off working collectively than as individuals. The collective strategy was both as a means of production but also as a means of security. Primitive defenses surrounded entire communities, including natural barriers, primitive fences, walls made from timber, and eventually stone walls. These structures represented was the outer borders of their communities. As communities became more sophisticated, they began trading with other communities, developing trades outside agriculture and growing economically. These communities grew from small villages to cities in order to protect the city walls that were often constructed around the city. These walls did not surround all of the lands and all of the citizens of the city, and much of the agricultural land was outside the walls. However, at times of attack, citizens could flee inside the walls for protection from outside invaders. Walled cities were found through the ancient Old World as well as the New World of the Americas. As cities began to grow in power, they often attacked other cities to expand their areas of influence and control. As one city conquered another, they continued to grow in power and areas of control until they emerged as empires, growing a diverse population in wide expanses of land. Often these empires would then build walls at the edge of their empire to either regulate who or what was entering their land or to keep out invaders. The Roman empires built Hadrian's Wall at the outer defenses of the empire's lands in Britain from invaders from the north, mainly the Scots. In the east, the Great Wall of China was constructed in stages over the course of nearly 2,000 years. The Great Wall of China resembled more of a modern border than any other walls built by early empires. The wall was built not just to keep out invaders, but also to regulate trade and prevent the smuggling of contraband. It is important to note that the Great Wall of China was not one singular wall, but a series of walls that changed as subsequent Chinese empires and dynasties expanded and receding. But what makes the Great Wall important is the largest and longest lasting man-made barrier constructed as a means of border security. In Europe, as the Roman Empire began to recede and eventually fall, the borders between areas of political control and dominance changed frequently right up to modern times. Who controlled what was often drawn along political or religious lines. As populations expanded and others receded, groups fought over control over a variety of resources, and wars were often fought over inheritance and who was the rightful heir or had right to rule over a particular land. The political landscape in Europe between the collapse of the Roman Empire and the 17th century resembles what is depicted in the HBO series Game of Thrones in a certain way. Initially, the Catholic Church served to provide some sort of institutional structure throughout Europe, but even the Church faced challenges to its authority. Initially, these challenges were in the form from the outside in the form of the Eastern Orthodox Church and Muslim invaders, and then internally in the form of the Reformation. Rulers throughout Europe began to ally themselves along political and religious lines. This resulted in a near constant state of conflict, with wars being fought somewhere on the continent up until the 30 Years' War ended. The 30 Years' War, which took place between 1618 and 1648, was actually a series of war principally fought in Central Europe involving most of the countries of Europe, including the Holy Roman Empire, Spain, France, Sweden, and the Dutch Republic. It was one of the longest and most destructive conflicts in European history and is one of the longest continuous wars in modern history. It led to the devastation of the entire region, leading to famine and disease, and left most of the combatant powers bankrupt. The 30 Years' War ended when a series of peace treaties signed between May and October of 1964, what had become known as the Treaties of Westphalia. These treaties are of great importance because they led to the modern nation-state and the concept that these nations maintain sovereignty over their territory with no role for external agents in domestic struggles. Despite these treaties, war continued to rage in Europe and borders continued to change. The Napoleonic War, World War I, World War II are just a few of the conflicts that altered the landscape in Europe. In fact, the borders within Europe are still changing, with the last revision to the map occurring just earlier this year on February 11, 2014, when 106 UN states recognized the independence of the Republic of Kosovo. At this time, I would ask that you go watch the video that is contained in Section 3 for this course, and then return to the Integrity class for Section 2 of this week's lecture.